Aggression. We have a UFC 300 fight week. We are your hosts, Brett Cagle and Anthony Ballister. We're going to bring everything that you need to know in regards to these fights at UFC 300, starting with the main event between Alex Pereira, two-division champion, and Jamal Hill, the man who never lost his light heavyweight title. What do you like about this matchup, Anthony?
I think it's a matchup of two great strikers. I think it's going to be, a matchup of guys who have similar skill sets. I think Jamal Hill may be the better grappler, but I think both these guys got KO power. And, every time we see one of these guys in the octagon, most of the time it's ending in a finish. So I think most likely it's going to be an exciting fight. I hope Jamal Hill's 100%. A lot of fight fans are probably, disappointed because there was all this buildup on, what's going to be the UFC 300's main event. And there was so many speculations on what it could be. And honestly, I don't think anybody had Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira picked out. And I think maybe it was disappointing when you look at some of the other options. But honestly, as a fight fan, I'm not disappointed at all. And how do you see this one going?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying 100%. I'm not disappointed in this either. As we get closer to the fight, I'm actually more intrigued about how this is going to go. Jamal Hill seems really confident in his media interviews leading into this one, saying he's going to stand and trade with Alex Pereira the entire time, and that's how he's going to win the fight, is on the feet. So, that's really confident words from someone, especially with Pereira being a former kickboxing world champion and knocking out all these guys, viciously. Now, Jamal Hill is a great athlete. He is 6'4". He is, like you were saying, he might be a better grappler, not due to technique, but physical frame. And he might have a weight advantage on Alex in this one, I believe. But I think Alex Pereira is the more technical kickboxer. I think that Jamal Hill is going to come in very, very confidently and try and walk Alex Pereira down. And I think he's going to walk into a big shot. I have Alex Pereira by knockout in this one. And I think that a significant storyline in this matchup is Glover Teixeira, the coach of Alex Pereira, being the man that Jamal Hill took the title from. And now Alex getting a chance at redemption for his coach and the former champion himself, Glover Teixeira. So I think that's a big storyline coming into this one that's kind of not being talked about as much in the media. I didn't see the press conference that just happened about an hour ago, but I hope that was addressed in it, and I think that's a big storyline in this one.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up. It's kind of like he could get revenge for his coach. And, it seems like we've been building up to this moment ever since we've seen Alex Pereira move up to light heavyweight. And, as far as how I see this fight going, I honestly see it the same way. I see Alex Pereira finding a way to get the KO, probably within like the second or third round. Now, what scares me for Pereira is I know he likes to keep his hands down a lot, and he could be susceptible to hits. And, that could be really bad and dangerous for Jamal Hill. And as we said, Jamal Hill is the better grappler. But I think Alex Pereira's takedown defense is pretty underrated. I think Glover Teixeira, has been teaching him quite a bit, and I think he's been improving with each one of his fights. And I think in this fight, I think Alex Pereira's takedown defense will be just enough. He'll be able to keep it on the feet, and I think he gets the KO win in probably the third round.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think second or third round, it's going to take him a little bit to gauge that distance and, the aggressive attacks of Jamal Hill. And Jamal Hill is a fast starter, so if he goes in there and gets Alex out of there in the first round, I think that's probably the most likely path to victory for him. But Alex Pereira is, a very technical kickboxer and one of the best in the world, and that's going to be hard to do. And, thus far in his career, only one guy's been able to do it, Israel Adesanya. I don't see this fight going to the ground at all. We're talking a little bit about the grappling of Jamal, and but I don't think he takes this fight to the ground. If you look at the interviews that he's having before this main event, he's making it very clear that he wants to stand and beat Alex at his own game, and he thinks that would gain him the most amount of fans and the most amount of respect from the fight community and the pundits. So I think that he's really going to try and make a statement in this one, and whether that's the right thing to do or not, we're going to find out on Saturday.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be very interesting. And like you said, when you brought up Israel Adesanya beating Pereira, Pereira was on his way to winning that fight. But Adesanya's strategy was to make him look like he was going to get the finish, because once Alex Pereira sees blood, he goes for the kill. And once he knows he's going to finish you, he just starts, letting his hands down. And Israel Adesanya knew that, and once he got him with his hands down, he got a shot, and that's all it took. So I don't know, maybe if Jamal Hill's going to try to do the same thing and try to bait Pereira with that. But, yeah, I still think Pereira is going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way. And if Jamal Hill is right, if he's confident, if he's 100% back, well, then we're in for a really great fight.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And kind of circling back to how we started this conversation, these guys might not be the most popular fighters in the UFC, and casual fight fans might have wanted George St. Pierre versus Khabib or some crazy mystical matchup that was unrealistic. But as far as being an entertaining fight, this is going to be a stand-up war, and I think this is going to be a very fan-friendly fight. And it wouldn't surprise me if it's fight of the night if it goes into the third or fourth round.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's going to be one of these main events where maybe they're not talking about it before, but they're certainly going to be talking about this fight after.
Yeah, absolutely. So then in the co-main event, we have an all-Chinese women's strawweight title match between Zhang Weili and Yan Xiaonan. Now, Zhang Weili got the championship back from Carla Esparza. In my opinion, I think she's the most dominant women's fighter on the UFC roster right now, but kind of going to have a bad blood matchup here with someone from her native country. The winner of this fight is going to be, the representative of China and, over 1 billion people. So there's a lot of popularity and respect and pride on the line in this one. So how do you see this matchup? Zhang Weili minus 525, a huge betting favorite at online sportsbooks for this one. Some people say that Yan Xiaonan needs to keep this fight on the feet, use her length and jab to try and keep Zhang at distance. But I think Yan Weili is really going to be, too athletic in this one, and I think she's going to get inside and eventually get takedowns as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'd see, Wang Zhili getting probably a submission win. I think she's going to be too much. Even though Yan is the number one contender, I just think, like you said, Wang Li is like the number one woman fighter in the world right now. She's unbelievable. And she pretty much could do it all. She can, strike as well, as long as grapple. But I think in this matchup, she's going to want to keep it on the ground. And I think she's going to win the fight either by decision or by submission.
Yeah, I like that pick. And another thing that I was looking at was that Carla Esparza lost to Zhang Weili, but at the same time knocked out Yan Xiaonan by ground and pound on the ground. So, I think that there's multiple ways that Weili can get this fight done on the ground. I think that she can get it done by submission, like you're saying, with 8 on her record in her career. And then I think that also she might be able to get the fight done with ground and pound as well. But I think she's going to have a significant advantage on the ground in this one.
Yeah, and I think if Yan's going to want to win this, I think it's going to have to probably try to be early. I think the longer the fight goes on, I think that more it favors Weili. I think the more that she can get the submissions, the more she can get ground control, it's going to favor her in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the really big question for me is, if Yan can stop the takedown attempts, what is it going to look like in the striking? Is she going to be able to use her technical boxing that we just saw in her last fight earn a knockout win over Jessica Andrade? Or are we going to see, Weili come and pull off these creative strikes that she has been able to do, like with her spinning back fist knockout of Joanna? Who do you think wins in the striking in this one?
I think it would be very, very close and competitive. I think if it's on the feet, that's where we get the closest fight. Honestly, I think Yan might be slightly the better striker. And I think if it turns into a striking match, I think that's her way on her path to victory. And I think that would be a very great way for it to go. If it's on the feet, I think that favors her all the way.
Yeah, I do too. I like what you're saying there. When you look at the losses to Rose Namajunas for Weili, she wasn't able to get her to the ground at times and was outpointed by leg kicks and jabs. And that's kind of the same game plan that Yan Xiaonan has when she's on the feet. So if she does stop the takedown attempts, I think this fight immediately gets a lot more interesting, for the viewers.
Yeah, 100%. I think if it's on the feet, we're not going to get a very close competitive fight. But if it does get on the feet and it turns into a striking match, I think this could be, one of the more exciting fights of the night as well.
Yeah, literally all of the fights on this card. I guess we didn't really talk about it off the top, but do you think that this is the greatest card in UFC history? In terms of star power, I've got to say that McGregor and Khabib is probably, the best main event in UFC history. But I haven't seen a card as deep as this. I've been watching it since I was 13 and 12 years old. In the depth of this card, starting it off with Figueiredo and Garbrandt, two world champions, it's just crazy.
Yeah, 100%. And I know, like like the UFC 299 card, a lot of people hyped it up, and there was a lot of discussion on, what's the better card. But honestly, I think I would have to side with UFC 300 for two reasons. I think it's a deeper card. I mean, every single fight has basically a ranked fighter except for one, and the one that doesn't still an exciting fight. And we got guys who are ranked and who are former champions fighting on early prelims, not even just the prelims. And I think what also separates this card too from 299 is I think the main event of Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira is a more exciting main event than Sean O'Malley versus Chito Vera. Because most people saw that one going in Sean O'Malley's way. I think this main event could be a much closer main event. But from top to bottom, this has got to be the best UFC card that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, me as well. Awesome. So that brings us to, the people's main event of the night, what really everyone's tuning in for, the BMF championship between Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway. We're going to have a 5-round fight here. 3 5-round fights we're going to have scheduled for this fight card. So, make sure you got some pizza and some friends around and you're ready to go because this one's going to last all night. But Justin Gaethje is going to take on Max Holloway, former featherweight champion Max Holloway, moving up to the 155-pound division to take on number one contender Justin Gaethje, who just knocked out Dustin Poirier. And he's been looking fantastic in his recent fights. And, his coach Trevor Whitman has him in great form coming into this one. Max Holloway just knocked out the Korean Zombie in South Korea. How do you see this taking place? I think that the volume of Max versus the power of Gaethje is really the story in this one.
Yeah, that's definitely the story. And it's really a tough fight to predict. I mean, honestly, I think since we've been doing these predictions, this might be the toughest one. I've been kind of going back and forth with it. With Justin Gaethje, I honestly wish he would have not taken this fight. I wish he would have tried to preserve himself to fight at Islam Makhachev for the lightweight title in June. But the way Justin Gaethje's looking at it is he doesn't need the lightweight belt. He has his own belt in the BMF belt, and he gives us a very, very exciting fight. We see Max Holloway moving up, and Max Holloway is a great striker, and it's hard to see him being outstriked. Justin Gaethje definitely has him in power, but I think Max Holloway is definitely more accurate and probably going to be more efficient with his strikes. And honestly, man, I really have a tough time predicting this one. But at the end of the day, I think Justin Gaethje just gets it. I think he's the bigger man. I think he's going to really dominate in terms of his leg kicks. I think Max Holloway's going to have a tough time with that. Now, I really have a tough time seeing Max Holloway be finished. That's not something we normally see. So I think Justin Gaethje may just, outstrike him in the fight and maybe cause more damage. It may also be a situation where Max Holloway has more strikes, but Gaethje does the more damage. And I think the referees and the coaches and the judges, they like to favor the guy who does more damage. So I'm going to go Justin Gaethje by a very, very close, maybe split decision.
I love absolutely everything you just said. I have Justin Gaethje by decision as well. Max Holloway has never been finished in his professional career. If Justin Gaethje is the first man to stop Max Holloway this weekend, that would be quite the accomplishment for his career. Now, as far as the leg kicks are concerned, I like that you brought that up as well because Alexander Volkanovski, when he defeated Max Holloway in those very close decisions, that was really the deciding factor was those leg kicks that he was able to damage Holloway with and able to outpoint him in those fights. Now, Justin Gaethje is one of the best leg kickers in the whole UFC. Him and Edson Barboza throw some of the most damaging kicks in the entire sport. So I don't know if Max wants to take those for 5 rounds. He's going to have to make a game plan of how to deal with those early. But I like Justin Gaethje in this matchup by decision as well. I think he's just going to be a little bit too big for Max. Now, Max in frame is 5'11". He's going to be the taller fighter in this one. But Gaethje, Gaethje always has that wrestling in his back pocket, but he never uses it. We haven't seen it yet in the UFC. And he's fought guys like Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler where he could have used it in the past. But maybe if it gets into deep waters here, 4th and 5th round with the title on the line, Justin Gaethje goes back to those collegiate wrestling roots. But if it stands on the feet, I think the volume of Max is going to be a problem. But Justin's going to have to get knockdowns and damage, like you were saying, to win some rounds.
So now for Max Holloway, now you see for him to get a win, do you think he could finish Gaethje, or do you think he's going to have to win just by straight volume, striking him, and probably win it by decision as well?
We've seen Gaethje get caught in wars. If we go back and watch the Eddie Alvarez and first Dustin Poirier fight, he was caught in both of those fights and eventually finished. So Justin Gaethje can be finished. And as it gets into the fourth and fifth round, if his output is drastic in those first 2 rounds, we could see the gas tank be a problem, because Max Holloway is one of the best in shape athletes in the UFC and has some of the best cardio, regardless of division. So. Yeah, I think if the longer this fight goes, I think it favors Max, honestly. I know we're picking Gaethje by decision, but I think that has a lot to do with the toughness we're attributing to Max Holloway. I think that we both kind of think it's going to be hard for Gaethje to get him out of there. But the longer that this fight goes, I think that it favors the cardio of Max Holloway and also the volume. If Gaethje's throwing single shots late, and loading up on big right hands, I could very easily see Max Holloway sniping him with 3 to 4 punch combinations and working the body against the cage and stuff like that. So I really, like you were saying, this is a very competitive fight, very close to call when we're predicting these things, and I'm just happy I can sit back as a fan and watch it on Saturday.
Yeah, me too. And honestly, what you said about Max Holloway, yeah, I think the longer the fight goes, it favors him. He's been in a lot of 5-round fights. He's been in a lot of title fights. He's been in a lot of octagon time. He's had over 7 hours of octagon time, which is absolutely insane. And he's also landed the most strikes. He's been in the UFC for a long time. So honestly, yeah, I think he's used to having these long, battles. And it's definitely going to come down to, toughness. And the longer the fight goes, it definitely favors Holloway. And I could definitely see this fight going, a million different ways. But as like we said, I'm going to favor Justin Gaethje just because of his power by a very close split decision.
Yeah, is this your favorite fight of the night? Out of all of these fights that we have on UFC 300, which one are you most interested in watching?
I mean, honestly, when the fight card came out, I wanted to say Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill. But I think as we get closer to the card, I think the BMF title belt between Holloway and Gaethje gets me the most excited. At first I thought about it, and I was like, where can these guys go? They're in different divisions. If Holloway wins, he's probably going to take the belt down to 145. If Gaethje wins, he stays at 155, and then what does Holloway do? But now that we get closer to the fight, I'm just really, really excited to see 2, warriors that like to fight to the distance and give it all they have in a very competitive fight. And, yeah, I think this may be my favorite fight heading into it.
Yeah, mine too. I think there's so much on the line in this fight. Like you were saying, number 1 contendership, it may be 155 or 145 for the winner of this one. If Max Holloway wants to go to 145, Justin Gaethje, obviously if he wins, will fight Islam Makhachev in the winner of that matchup for the title in June. So, I really like this one, and it's a great addition to this card. But we've also got other intriguing matchups on this one, a lightweight contest between former champion Charles Oliveira and divisional upcomer Arman Tsarukyan. Now, Tsarukyan went to the decision with champion Islam Makhachev in his debut, and since then is really impressed. Just knocked out Beneil Dariush viciously with a right hand and then ground and pound. But Oliveira also holds a finish win over Dariush. So this is going to be interesting to me. The former champion, Charles Oliveira, is 34. He's not quite over the hill yet, so it's not one of these matchups where it's an old fighter versus a young fighter, and the age kind of dictates where we're thinking the prediction's going. But Charles Oliveira in this one is almost a 2-1 underdog, and it keeps climbing by the day. Right now at plus 180. What do you think of this matchup, Anthony?
I think it's definitely very close. I definitely think it's going to be a battle of better grapplers. Both these guys are great on the ground. Charles Oliveira having the most submissions in UFC history. That's what he does. I thought he looked great against Beneil Dariush. He was supposed to get the rematch with Islam, but unfortunately he got the cut above his eye. Obviously, like you said, there is a little bit of an age gap, but not too much to where you're going to favor Tsarukyan. I know Tsarukyan, I think, is the betting favorite coming into this fight. I know it being 3 rounds, I think maybe favors Tsarukyan. I think if this was a 5-round fight, I think that would favor Charles Oliveira. But at the end of the day, I just think Charles Oliveira is a better fighter at this time. I think Tsarukyan does have potential to fight for the belt at some point. But I think right now, outside of Islam, I think Charles Oliveira is the best lightweight on the planet. So I'm going to go with Charles Oliveira by submission in the 3rd round.
In the 3rd, wow. I like Charles as well, and our heads in the same place. It seems like for these predictions, but on this entire card, Charles really stuck out to me as the underdog of the card. His championship experience, I think, is going to be a big factor in this one. If you go back and look at his resume, he's beaten and fought the best competition that the sport has to offer. He might have one of the best resumes in all of UFC's history. So Arman Tsarukyan is a great and very potential athlete. I think that one day he may be champion of this division. But Charles Oliveira has a couple years left of his prime that I think he's going to get back into title contention with. So I agree. I also have Charles Oliveira in this one. Normally when we see grapplers, as you mentioned, both of these guys do like to go to the ground. They stand and trade. If we go back to the Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington fight, amongst others that we've seen recently, when we get two grapplers together, we see guys, trade on the feet. Tsarukyan is the better athlete probably physically. If you had like a 40-yard dash and a combine, Tsarukyan would, blow your doors off. But Charles Oliveira's experience and, his ability to find submissions on the ground if the fight goes there is why I'm going to favor him. I do think that Tsarukyan might have an advantage in power on the feet. And Oliveira has been caught in all of these fights that he's had recently. He was caught against Chandler before coming back. He was caught against Poirier and Gaethje both before coming back and finishing them as well. So Charles Oliveira can get hit, but in the last stretch of fights, he's shown a tremendous chin, and his tremendous will to win can't be denied as well. So I've got Charles Oliveira in this one. I'm going to take him by decision.
Okay, so do you see any way that Oliveira can get the submission, or do you think it has to be?
I do. I think that Arman Tsarukyan might go and try and like a double leg takedown and try and get Oliveira to his back, and I think he could get caught in a guillotine. I'd also like to see the guard of Oliveira and how that looks against Tsarukyan, because Tsarukyan was actually taken down by Islam Makhachev, if you go back and watch those fights, and also has lost to Ismagulov. So, I think that, Tsarukyan is very talented on the ground, but I think, he's very well-rounded, and that's why he has the potential that he has, because when he goes against another grappler in his last contest in Beneil Dariush, he has the ability to stand and trade, and he showed how powerful that right hand is, and at 26 years old, he just keeps getting better with every performance.
Yeah, and I honestly agree. I think he may actually be the better striker in this fight over Oliveira. If it does stay on the feet, he actually, is a great grappler, and he does have great takedown defense. If he can find a way to stop Oliveira's takedowns and keep the fight on the feet, he can outstrike Oliveira, maybe get a decision win himself. I'm going to favor Oliveira by submission. But like I said, Tsarukyan can get the win, and a lot of people are expecting, him to be the next upcoming contender for Islam, and for this fight to be the stepping stone for that.
Yeah, I think if he beats Charles convincingly, we got to see how the Max versus Justin Gaethje matchup shakes out. But a title shot is certainly on the horizon for Arman Tsarukyan if he keeps this up. So last fight of the main card here, we've got Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. This fight is trending to break records at the UFC betting windows as far as that's concerned. With Las Vegas, Bo Nickel enters this fight 25-1 against Cody Brundage. One thing to note here: Cody Brundage did just defeat an undefeated fighter in Zachary Reese in his last matchup. Zachary Reese is a Texas native who is 6'3" in the middleweight division and came into a fight 9-0 against Cody Brundage. And Brundage knocked him out with a slam while he was attempting a triangle choke. So. Brundage is, not a newcomer to having to face the up-and-coming prospects, and, he is a veteran. So, I think Bo Nickel gets this done. No shock there. I think he probably gets a finish here and moves on to better things. But do you think we could see something crazy at UFC 300 out of this matchup?
Honestly, I don't think I'm going to see it here. I think Bo Nickel, even though he's not ranked, I really think he's one of the 10 best middleweights on the planet right now. He's unbelievable. And I think he, with his wrestling background, it's going to be hard for anybody to out-wrestle him or out-grapple him. And, each and every fight he's getting better with the striking. That's basically what he's working on right now. And he's a fast learner, and he's been progressing very, very fast. And I think, unfortunately, I'm really upset that they did put this on the main card, even though I think they are trying to showcase Bo Nickel. I wish this was on the early prelims and, maybe have Aljamain Sterling or, Yuri Prohaska on the main card. I think those guys are more deserving than Bo Nickel. But honestly, I think the UFC really wants to showcase Bo Nickel. They want him to look good. They want him to show that he can win on the main card with everybody watching. And I think this could be a stepping stone for Bo Nickel to establish himself. And then when he does fight a ranked opponent, his next fight, he'll have a huge fan base. And they could probably sell that as a co-main event or maybe a third fight on a huge pay-per-view card. But I got Bo Nickel by submission, probably in the first round.
Yeah, I have Bo Nickel by knockout in the first round. I think that either submission or knockout, he can finish this fight standing or on the ground. But, yeah, like you were saying, Bo Nickel is one of the best wrestlers in the world and, was part of that United States Olympic team and in those trials. So, he is one of the top wrestlers regardless of nation. So, I like Bo Nickel's potential. I think, like you're saying, he does go and fight a ranked fighter with a win here. But, as far as who should be on the main card here, I agree with what you're saying. You can't have former champions on the prelims while an unproven guy is sitting here on the pay-per-view slot opening the card. But, that just shows me how much stock they're putting into this guy and how much potential they really think that he has. I think there are blockbuster fights on the horizon for him with Sean Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev. And Robert Whitaker and maybe even Israel Adesanya when he comes back. So I'm not saying those are immediate matches that he's going to have here next fight, but those are things that the UFC is looking for to sell pay-per-views down the line. And I think that they think that he's going to be their next big pay-per-view star here in America. And they're kind of putting their eggs in one basket here in telling everybody they're doing it by putting him on the pay-per-view main card for his fight.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's also why we haven't seen him fight a ranked fighter yet, because I think they want to bring him along, progressively. He's still, very young in terms of how long he's been doing MMA. Obviously he did wrestling most of his life, so you don't want to rush him in too soon. And, once he loses, you kind of lose that aura and, mystique about him. It basically tarnishes everything you're doing. And even Bo Nickel says he doesn't mind, taking time off and taking, very progressively slow. I think right now this would probably be his last fight where we see him be such a huge favorite. I think he fights a ranked opponent. But I think it's going to be probably someone who's just inside the rankings at like 14 or 15. And then maybe after that, someone just outside the top 10. I think they're really going to bring him along slowly. And I think we're probably maybe a year to 2 years away before we start seeing those Sean Strickland and Khamzat Chimaev main events.
Yeah, absolutely. There are guys in between there. And I think that a more reasonable matchup for him right after this one would be like a Joe Pyfer, who we just saw lose to Jack Hermanson, and is borderline around the back half of the top 15. I think that would be a good matchup for him. But he's got to get the job done this weekend. This is mixed martial arts. I was at the Mohegan Sun when Pat Downey lost to Christian Eccles as a 28-1 favorite, and Pat Downey wrestled Bo Nickel twice in college. So, Things can happen. You can come in overconfident. It cannot be your night, and you never know. So this is mixed martial arts, and crazy things do happen in this sport. But as far as the prelims are concerned, these have to be the best prelims of all time. Now, you can go back to look at UFC 200. There were great prelims there. We had Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar. We had Travis Brown versus Cain Velasquez. But I mean, these are just absolutely insane. We'll start off here. Yuri Prohaska, former light heavyweight champion, facing the returning Alexander Rakic. Now, Rakic injured his leg against Jan Blachowicz, about a year ago and required surgery. So he's been out for quite some time. He's going to return here, and, Yuri's going to be a tough guy to return against. Very creative, very dangerous, looks to finish fights from all angles, spinning elbows, crazy kicks and techniques, and is also very aggressive and tries to push the pace of this fight. Do you think this is going to be too much too soon, right, in his first fight back for Alexander Rakic?
I mean, yeah, I think it is a tough fight to ask for someone to do. But honestly, I really like Alexander Rakic. I think he's the better all-around fighter. I think Yuri didn't look that good against Alex Pereira in his last fight. He definitely didn't look like the way he looked before his injury. I think he's the better striker. He's got a very unique style of striking, and I think that's going to be his path to victory. But I think Rakic is the better grappler, and he can strike as well. And with the last fight, we seen Yuri is perceptible to taking hits and being knocked down as well. So honestly, I'm going to favor Rakic. I think he's going to take the fight to the ground, and I think he's going to do all right enough on the striking to keep it close. And I'm going to go Rakic by a very, very close decision.
Yeah, I like what you're saying a lot. I have Rakic by decision as well. I think that he is the more well-rounded fighter, but the thing is with Yuri, with these creative strikes, he does leave himself open. If you go look at the Ryzen Grand Prix when he lost by knockout to King Mo Lawal, Lawal was a huge underdog in that fight, but he kind of comes forward with reckless abandon and leaves his chin wide open in the air at times, and is susceptible to getting caught, like we saw with that Alex Pereira fight, like you just mentioned. So, I think that Rakic is technical enough to land a clean right hand down the middle if Yuri comes in, kind of with his hands down and trying to throw, wild combinations. I think Rakic could even catch him and maybe get him out of there as well. I've been impressed with Rakic, in his career. I just don't know if coming first fight back, I'd like to see him at the open workouts this week and kind of see how he's moving on that leg, a little bit before he got in there. But, he's a tremendous fighter, and I think that the winner of this fight could be next in line for the title.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, we got, Ankalaev. He probably may be next for the title, but I think, if Rakic gets this win, he's probably second right there in line. And who knows, they may have him and Ankalaev in a number one contenders match, and the winner of that fight's the winner of Jamal Hill and Pereira. So it definitely puts him in the conversation, and we've seen in the sport, you never know. At one point, Dricus was the title contender. He wasn't able to fight. Sean Strickland comes up. Rakic wins this fight. Ankalaev is not ready to fight, or something happens. Maybe they can't negotiate. Next thing you know, Rakic is fighting for the title. So, with this win, I think he puts himself right in contention for it. And I think, he injured his leg against, Blachowicz. But besides that, he's been pretty good lately in his UFC career, and I think he's definitely going to be a future title contender.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think that his title, like we were saying in other fights, I think on the horizon he's going to be, a title contender, a lot like Arman Tsarukyan. I think both these guys have massive potential. But, for Ankalaev being next, the UFC hasn't done a lot of favors to Ankalaev recently. If you go back after the draw that he had with Blachowicz, he kind of called the UFC out, and was very disappointed in the judging in that fight. And the UFC put him on ice for a year. And didn't give him a fight. So, I don't think the UFC is really doing Magomed Ankalaev a lot of favors right now. And with an impressive performance this weekend, you never know. The sky's the limit for Rakic.
Yeah, and I know the UFC really likes Alex Pereira. He's a fan favorite, and I think he does sell tickets. And I think Ankalaev is a terrible matchup for a guy like Alex Pereira. So I think, if those two guys fight, you may be losing Alex Pereira as your future champion. And having Ankalaev, even as great as he is and as talented as he is, he's not really a marquee name as a title contender, and he's not really going to be a guy that's going to sell main events. So in terms of money and where the UFC is, the winner of Jamal Hill and Alex Pereira, they might prefer a guy like Rakic just because Ankalaev is not really a household name.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the least popular of the contenders, but at the same time, he's the most dangerous to Alex Pereira and Jamal Hill. Because of his threat of his ground game, and also his ability to stand, and trade with anybody as well, and he has an iron chin. Magomed Ankalaev, to me, is the most talented 205-pounder in the world right now. And I think he's probably our future champion, but it's just whether he gets that shot, or if he's going to have to fight the winner of this fight as well. But we've also got another champion in Aljamain Sterling moving up in weight and making his debut at featherweight against Calvin Kattar. Now, we've seen Kattar struggle a little bit recently, but he does have a similar style to Sean O'Malley. He's 5'11" like O'Malley. He's predominantly a boxer like O'Malley. He has power in his hands. We've seen, him go through wars with Max Holloway. He's got a good chin. And he was also able to beat Giga Chikadze in an absolute battle as well. So, Aljamain Sterling's going to want to get this fight to the ground. No surprise here. That's where he dominates fights with his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think that he can get it done by submission or decision in this one. If you want to put in the fight to finish, obviously I have Aljamain by submission, but I think this one probably goes the distance and he controls Cater for 3 rounds. On the feet, he's not going to want to stay there long, and he's going to want to dictate the range better than he did in that O'Malley fight. I saw pictures of Aljamain Sterling this week, and he looks in tremendous physical shape. So I think that this new weight class could be a rejuvenation to his career, and he might have a title run left in him.
Yeah, I think this is more of his natural weight class. I think 135 was a really tough cut for him, and I think that led to him being KO'd by Sean O'Malley. I think his body caught up to him, and I think he's just super dehydrated. And, it says that it takes your brain, 48 hours to really rehydrate after a weight cut like that. And, you're more perceptible to KOs. So, I think this was the perfect time for him to move up in weight class. Yes, Calvin Kattar is the better striker, and he's definitely going to want to win this fight the same way as O'Malley did. I don't think he's as great as a striker or as accurate as O'Malley is. And I think at 145, Sterling's going to be really, really tough to KO now. I think he's going to be in the best shape that he's been in a long time. I would say I think Sterling's going to win it by decision. I think Calvin Kattar is good enough to not be finished. So I'm going to go Sterling by decision.
Yep. I've got the same thing. So also, and honestly, that's an interesting matchup as well with the East Coast factor. You got Boston versus New York as well. Trained by Ray Longo, as Aljamain Sterling trains with Merab and these guys. So Boston versus New York at UFC 300. I'm sure the East Coast fans appreciate that. Also, we've got the debut of PFL champion Kayla Harrison. This was a huge signing when the UFC announced it a few months ago. She's going to take on former world champion Holly Holm. Holly Holm was the woman to finish Ronda Rousey, the first judoka that was a Olympic medalist in the UFC. Now, Kayla Harrison, 2-time gold medal winner in judo, coming into the UFC. Kind of, the new school Ronda Rousey. She does the same kind of thing, wants to get you to the ground and look for submissions. She's not as, proficient with the jiu-jitsu, with the arm bars and stuff, but she does have good ground and pound. She's a very dominant physical force, and I think Kayla Harrison is really going to have a showcase fight in this one against Holly Holm, and I think she's going to do whatever she wants with her on the ground. Yeah,
I think Kayla Harrison, I think she's a great signing for the UFC. She's definitely very, very big for the weight class, and a lot of people are wondering if she's going to be able to make the weight. But, I think Holly Holm is no longer in her prime anymore. I don't think she's the same fighter as she once was. And I think Kayla Harrison, if she makes weight, I think she's going to dominate this fight. And I think she's going to put herself as a, fast track into her being a title contender as well. And with her size and, how much she's going to be able to dominate these other women in the weight class, she's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with in the future.
Yeah, I have her winning by submission. I think she gets Holly out of there. Holly's had a great career, but she is just, in that back half of her career. And I think that it's really Kayla's time to come in and make a statement. And this was a matchup that Dana White put together to try and do just that for her. Also on the card, we've got a featherweight matchup between Diego Lopez, who looked great against Movsar Evloev, the undefeated fighter at featherweight, and has then rattled off consecutive wins leading to this matchup with Sadiq Youssef. We saw Sadiq Youssef turn back by Barboza last year. That was an amazing fight and one of the best of 2023. I don't see any way that this fight isn't entertaining. It's not really being talked about by everyone with all of everything else going on the card. But Diego Lopez, to me, is a really talented fighter and someone that we should keep an eye on as far as his potential is concerned.
Yeah, I think he's definitely one of the best up-and-comers. He basically, on, very, very short notice, went toe-to-toe and almost beat a great fighter in Movsar. And I have lots of respect for Movsar. I think Movsar, actually is a contender for maybe getting a title shot against Topuria. I think he's good enough to get a title shot right now. And for Diego Lopez to come right in, not be able to train, not be able to have a training camp, and come in short notice and be able to basically almost win that fight, I think that's unbelievable. And that only shows you how great he's going to be in the future. I think, Youssef is a great fighter as well. He's a great striker. I think Diego Lopez, though, is just going to be too much. He's going to prove that he's one of the best up-and-comers. Maybe he wins this fight and he's going to be fast-tracked as well because we've seen him go toe to toe with one of the top ranked guys. And honestly, I think Diego Lopez wins this by submission in probably the second round.
Man, we got the same picks. I got Diego Lopez by submission as well. 12 subs on the record of Diego Lopez. Only one submission victory for Sadiq Youssef. I think that really stands out to me when I'm looking at this fight. Also, there's going to be a length advantage on the side of Diego Lopez here, 5'11" to 5'9", and he will also enjoy an 1.5-inch reach advantage in this one. But I think this is going to be really entertaining, and there's not really a fight on this card you can go and have a break and not watch. It's awesome as a fight fan. So you've got Diego Lopez by submission. I've got him by submission as well. Also, we've got a lightweight matchup between Jalen the Tarantula Turner, fresh off of his vicious knockout win over Bobby Green, taking on Money Renato Moicano. This is going to be a fan favorite matchup. Both of these guys have big followings here in America. Moicano kind of went viral with his last post-fight speeches. He's very good on the ground, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, tough as nails. He has been knocked out 3 times in his career. I think that Turner could also put him away here. And Turner looked tremendous in his last fight with Bobby Green. To me, this is striker versus grappler. I know Moicano is good on the feet, but hasn't really got those knockout wins in his career to show that. I like Turner in this matchup. I think the length, the athleticism, and him being 28 years old and coming into the prime of his career as Moicano is 34. I like Jalen Turner in this matchup a lot.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think Jalen Turner is the superior athlete. He's the superior striker. I feel bad for Moicano. He just got into the rankings, and I think that this is just a bad matchup for him at this time. I know Patty Pimblett wanted to fight him. I wish maybe he would have took that fight instead. I think if he wants to win this fight, Moicano's going to have to win it on the ground, either by decision or by submission. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Jalen Turner. I think he's going to, outstrike him. He's at around 6'3". He's got to be one of the tallest 155 pounders in the world. It's crazy that at 6'3" you can make that weight. But he's going to use that length, and I think he's going to win this fight actually by KO.
I do as well. I have him by KO as well. In that last fight with Bobby Green, that straight left hand that he landed on Bobby was just awesome before he then took the back and finished him with ground and pound. So Jalen Turner is really coming on right now for me, and I think that he's somebody to watch at 155 pounds. And I'll tell you what, I think the winner of this fight could be fighting Benoit Saint Denis next, and I think that would be a good matchup, especially if it's Jalen Turner winning. I'd like to see the striker versus grappler matchup with him and Benoit Saint Denis.
Yeah, that would be a great fight, and I really like Jalen Turner, and he had a very, very close loss to Dan Hooker. And he's looked great in all his fights, and I definitely think, he's a couple fights away from going on a nice little run and moving up the rankings. I think he's talented enough to, in any fight that he's in, he's got a chance to win, especially with his length and, his size at that weight class. I think in any fight you got to give him a chance. And, and against Benoit Saint Denis, being as strong and as great of a grappler he is, that would be a tremendous matchup.
Yeah. And, honestly, for Turner, he's such a good athlete that just getting more experience in the gym year after year, I just feel as he gets in the next 4 years and he starts to become 31, 32, that he's really going to turn into a new and different level of fighter here. 77-inch reach at 155 pounds. That's the best in the division and, certainly gives him an advantage in a lot of these matchups. Now we've got a women's strawweight fight between former champion Jessica Andrade and 17-3 ranked contender Marina Rodriguez. I've really been impressed with Marina Rodriguez's volume on the feet. I think she's a good striker. I like her output. I think that she puts a lot of volume on people, landing 4.7 significant strikes per round. So, per minute, not per round. But, like I was saying, her output is tremendous, and she's going to have a length advantage on Andrade. That's nothing new for Andrade. She's short and stocky, very powerful. She's had to answer the call against tough competitors like Aaron Blanchfield and Mackenzie Dern. I'm sorry. She just beaten Mackenzie Dern, had to answer the call there, won by knockout. I like Marina Rodriguez in this matchup as an underdog by decision. I think she puts volume on Andrade. Andrade, to me, can get her to the ground and is the stronger physical athlete, but I like Rodriguez in this matchup.
Yeah, I think this is a very exciting matchup. I think both of these ladies could strike. I think that both these ladies could just stand on the feet and go strike for strike. I think if they do that, that probably will favor Marina Rodriguez. And I think this is maybe her time. And I think Marina Rodriguez is going to outstrike her. I think it's going to be a very close fight, but I think just overall volume and overall damage, I think she's just going to have the better numbers and the better strikes. And I think by the end of the fight, when you look at the stats, she's going to be the one who caused the most damage, and I think they're going to favor her. So I'm going to go Rodriguez by decision.
Yeah, I also have Rodriguez by decision here. I think Andrade has had a great career, but I think it's the time for Rodriguez to kind of come into her own here. So also, speaking of veterans, this is a veteran matchup we've got now between Bobby Green and Jim Miller. 31-15 for Bobby Green, 37-17 for Jim Miller. He will be the only fighter to ever compete on UFC 100, 200, and 300. Jim Miller is now 4-1 in his last 5, had a vicious knockout win over Jesse Butler in just 23 seconds. He can get it done standing, and he's also got 20 submissions on the ground. Bobby Green was just knocked out in his last fight, and it was bad. How much does that play a factor coming into this one?
Yeah, it definitely plays a factor. We've seen with guys like Volkanovski what that could do to your psyche. Anytime you get knocked out like that, you're definitely going to be feeling different in the next fight. And, it's just human nature. The brain's only going to allow your body to get hurt so many times. So when you have a significant, brain injury like that, your body's going to try to stop you from doing that. And then, that may make you fight differently. You may hesitate more. You may, fight a little bit differently. But this is definitely going to be a very exciting fight. Jim Miller, honestly, if you look at the UFC record books, they might as well just name it after Jim Miller. He owns every record in the UFC. And, he's a great story for him to be fighting this long. And, for him at his age to be fighting in that weight class that well is unbelievable. I know he's got a decent record over his last few fights. He hasn't fought anybody that you would say is super, super great or high tier. Bobby Green, fighting a guy like Jalen Turner, we said how great he is. Everything in me wants to pick Jim Miller. I'm a huge fan of him, and I really want to see him win this fight. But I think Bobby Green's going to win this fight probably by decision. Or I wouldn't be surprised if he gets the KO, but I'm going to go Bobby Green by decision.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there. Bobby Green definitely has faced a better competition recently. I think that Jim Miller is still dangerous. I think that he's going to have advantage on the ground if it gets there. We've seen Bobby Green get taken down and submitted by Islam Makhachev in the first round. Now, obviously, Islam Makhachev is a different level of fighter than Jim Miller at this stage in his career. But I think this means so much to Jim. Biggest moment he might have left in his career. If he goes and gets a win here, he might even retire. You never know. He might call it quits with a big win here against Bobby Green. So I think that I like Jim Miller. I think a lot for the same reason that I had Chris Weidman in his last contest. I think that the moment just matters more to him in this one than it does for Bobby Green. Yeah,
and I really, really hope it goes that way. I think if Jim Miller goes in there and beats a ranked fighter at his age and can say that not only did I fight at UFC 100, 200, 300, I also won in each one of them. Man, what more can you say about him? I think that should put him in the UFC Hall of Fame if he's not already in there already. And, what a better way to go out. Obviously, at his age, he's not going to go on any title run. So even though he's going to be ranked after this fight, he's not going to go on any insane title run and beat a bunch of ranked fighters. So, for him to go out this way, that would be a great story. And who knows, if he goes out there and gets the KO win and retires, we may be talking about that as one of the biggest storylines coming out of this card.
Yeah, I agree. Now, to start the card, we have a very interesting fight between two former world champions. Cody Garbrandt did have a tough stretch for a little bit where he was knocked out by Kai Kara-France down a weight class. He's now moved back up to bantamweight and, resurfaced at this weight class with a couple wins here. He's facing Davison Figueiredo, who's looked very good since moving up himself from 125 pounds. I think Figueiredo is going to have a serious power advantage in this matchup. And, the chin of Cody Garbrandt's been tested recently, and he's been knocked out by fighters who haven't packed a punch quite like Figueiredo, when we talk about the Kai Kara Francis. So I think this is a very interesting matchup. It's one that Cody's going to want to win to keep his career alive. But Deiveson Figueiredo, to me, is the one who's a legitimate contender at this weight class at this stage.
Yeah, I agree with everything you say. I do think, Cody Garbrandt, I think this fight's more important to him. I think if Figueiredo loses this fight, he can still get another ranked fighter. But Cody Garbrandt, man, if he gets this loss, that's going to be very bad for him. He's finally getting a ranked opponent. I know he's won a couple of his last fights, but they weren't against, household names. Both guys aren't in their prime anymore, and the best days, are behind them. But I think Figueiredo's maybe more closer to their prime than Cody Garbrandt is. So, I'm going to go, Figueiredo by KO. And like you said, Cody Garbrandt has been KO'd before. Figueiredo looked great in his last fight against Rob Font. So I'm going to go Figueiredo by KO.
Yeah, I've got Figueiredo by KO as well. I think the chin of Cody's been tested one too many times. Now, he has gotten wins, but they're not against the same level of competition as what he's going to face on Saturday. So this is really, to me, first fight back, against elite competition for Cody Garbrandt. And I'm interested to see how he responds here. But I've got to take Deiveson Figueiredo off what I've seen in the past. Now, Cody Garbrandt is one of my favorite fighters of all time. I remember where I was 16 years old at the Buffalo Wild Wings when he put on that performance against Dominic Cruz. And I think to this day, that is the best performance I've seen in a title fight. And just shut out dominant and beat Dominic Cruz at his own game. But, that Cody Garbrandt is long gone. And the TJ Dillashaw fights really took a lot out of him. And, I just hope he can get back into it in his career. He's 32 years old, so, he's not long in the tooth yet, and he might have a couple more wins left in him. But it's going to be tough on Saturday for this one.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be tough for him. And, I think because it's such a high-key matchup against a big name, I think that's why he took it. But I do wish Garbrandt would have took, maybe a lesser fighter, ranked fighter, just to get back on track. This is a very, very tough matchup, when you're finally going against top competition. But, honestly, when was the last time you've seen a fight this good starting off an early prelim? This has got to be the best first fight I've ever seen on the card.
For real. I'm so excited for this. And, do you think that this is going to be a packed stadium from the first opening fight? Normally we see people trickle in late, especially in boxing. UFC crowds are better about getting there at least before the main card starts. But these are main card matchups starting this out. You think people will be packed in the seats at 5 o'clock?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think Dana White, wanted to do that. I think that's why he wanted to have the most stacked card ever. Because honestly, you could take, the main card out of it. Maybe you don't have an elite main event. But honestly, I think you could make a tremendous fight card even if you just had the prelims and the early prelims. So this is going to be a tremendous card. I mean, honestly, you could take any single one of these 13 fights and make them a main event at a UFC fight night. So this is going to be a great card, and I think it's going to be a packed house from start to finish. I can't wait to watch every single fight, and I can't wait to break it down on Sunday.
Yeah, this is a very exciting time to be a fight fan. With $299 and $300 back-to-back, we've kind of been spoiled here with great pay-per-views, and, it's no better time to be a fan of the UFC. All right,
100%.
fight fans. Oh, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, I said 100%. I agree. This is the best time I think to be a UFC fan.
Yeah, and then 301, we got Steve Erceg versus Pantoja coming up next month, and, we'll be interested in breaking that down as well. But that's our preview for this week, fight fans. We'll be back on Sunday to review this card. Take our predictions and bet on him if you want. He's Anthony Ballister, and I'm Brett Cagle. We'll catch you next time. See ya.
See ya.